Welcome to Review Set Scare with Jess and Blair. I'm Jess.
I'm Blair.
Blair, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. Yourself?
I am doing very well. Thank you for asking. We've made it to June, another month in the books, which means a brand new set of movies to chat about. This month, our theme is going to be Attack of the Killer. What?
Attack of the Killer. What?
What? So basically, kind of abnormal, unique killers. We're not going to see your traditional slashers in this one. We've got a couple creatures from space this month, but I'm excited about this month. I'm excited about this month. And what better way to start off this month than talking about a classic? But before we do that, what do you say we chat a little bit about some horror news?
This is horror news.
Blairski, you got some horror news?
Well, we're only 2 days between recording our last episode and this episode. So I don't have much for new horror news, but I do have this. A24 and IMAX are celebrating this summer by re-releasing the director's cut of Ari Aster's fantastic film, Midsummer, to IMAX theaters starting on the actual summer solstice on June 20th. I, for one, will probably be going. Jesse, will you be my date?
Yes, I would love to. I'm glad you asked. You buy the tickets, I'll buy the treats.
Fair enough. Yeah.
The usual. We love that movie. If you go back and listen to our Midsummer episode, we love that episode. Mm-hmm. We love that movie. And I'm really excited to see what the director's cut is like.
Me too, especially on such a big screen like an IMAX.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to see that much color in the theater.
Yeah, right. It's a very colorful movie.
Very bright. Yeah, very bright. Super excited to see what the director's cut is like, how much longer the director's cut is going to be.
Yeah.
I can't wait. It's going to be fantastic.
I'm not sure how long it's running till. We'll have to look into it, but definitely starts June 20th. So stoked for that, man.
Yeah, let's keep an eye out for that one for sure. Anything else for horror news?
That's all I got for this one, man.
I've got two here, and in my opinion, both huge pieces of news. It's official. The new It-inspired television show, Welcome to Derry. We've chatted about this in the past. It's been a minute since we've had any news, but they just released a massive cast announcement. The series, which will premiere in 2025 and will be a prequel to It Chapter 1, will see the return of Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise the Dancing Clown.
Yeah, I saw they made that official. There was talks about it already, but they finally made it official.
Yeah, Deadline confirmed earlier this week that it was official. This is something, like you were saying, it was kind of in the air. It was a lot of will he, won't he going around. Finally can confirm not only is he starring as Pennywise the Dancing Clown, but he's also executive producing the series.
Oh, right on. Right on.
So really, really cool. Obviously, it's not the first time Bill Skarsgård has played this character. Not only that, but it's also not the first time he's been in a Stephen King adapted television series either, as he was in season 1 of Castle Rock, which was really, really good. Okay. So that's awesome. Huge news. Really excited about that. And then my last piece of news here, more huge news regarding the newest Blumhouse Exorcist reboot.
I read this as well.
So this is, I mean, we've talked about this and how it kind of seems like it was a bit of a disaster right from the get-go. Obviously, the first installment of the trilogy was not as successful as Blumhouse had hoped. And then we obviously saw departures from major players in making this movie happen. So it was recently announced that Mike Flanagan, known for such movies as Dr. Sleep and Hush and series as Haunting of Hill House and The Haunting of Bly Manor, is officially on board to write, direct, and produce. And it was also hinted that the original plans for a trilogy are no longer moving forward.
Okay. So I wonder if he's going to just make his own take. Like, I don't think, is it going to have anything to do with David Gordon Green's movie?
No, it's not.
Okay.
And apparently, according to this report, and it was also stated that the film will take place in the Exorcist universe, but it will be a brand new take.
Okay.
Which is a little bit frustrating. We went and saw the first installment in the now defunct trilogy.
Yeah.
We weren't totally blown away, but we also weren't totally disappointed.
It was
But
okay,
it also, I mean, it left kind of at a part where it's like, okay, they've set it up for a sequel.
yeah.
So, I mean, to not see that first movie or that particular story finish up, a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, a little. Yeah.
But also, I mean, Mike Flanagan has been knocking it out of the park with all of these Netflix series. Fall of the House of Usher, Hill House, Bly Manor. Those are big series. So really, really excited to see. And also Dr. Sleep was fantastic.
Love Dr. Sleep.
So really excited to see what his take is going to be on The Exorcist. I know that it's like a big part of why he became a filmmaker. So excited.
I am curious if that might have been the end or the last we see of David Gordon Green in the world of horror.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. I think we'll see more, but I think we'll maybe see bigger players, bigger producers being a little bit more wary of giving complete control to one giving the trilogy to him right off the bat, and then him not doing the trilogy, and even looking at, the Halloween, the latest trilogy of that, and too much power, maybe not a good thing. It's maybe good for his fresh set of eyes, but I mean, don't immediately announce. That's where I think a lot of this is, running into issues. Don't announce a trilogy before the first movie's out.
Yeah. Yeah.
See what happens, see how it goes. And also maybe don't write as if the movie is going to be a trilogy.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't, if it doesn't work out, and if it doesn't pan out, and they don't end up going with a second or third film in the franchise, then
it's okay.
No, do a complete story. Whatever. Even if it's 2 hours, just do up a complete story, beginning, middle, end. And then you don't have to worry about something like this, where it's like, okay, you know what? Scrap it. We're not doing the trilogy that we spent a shit ton of money promoting.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to start fresh. And it's like, it's kind of a bit of an eye roll. It's like, do we need to start fresh, or do we maybe not need to see another Exorcist movie? I don't know.
Fair enough.
I don't know.
Fair enough.
If the latest one didn't do so well, what's saying that, the next one is going to do any better?
No matter who's behind it. Yeah.
It's a storied franchise. At least the original is, part 2 and 3. People, I think, were upset with it being announced in the first place. And now with it, they maybe should have scrapped the whole thing. But who knows? Only time will tell. We're still going to go and see it, I'm sure.
Yes, we will.
And I'm sure we'll see it in theaters, take our money, but we're not necessarily happy about it. That's all I have for horror news and for my little rant. What do you say we jump into this week's episode?
Let's do it.
The very first episode in Attack of the Killer month goes to 1958's The Blob. Runtime on this one, 1 hour, 26 minutes. Blairski, initial thoughts on the runtime.
It doesn't really get much better runtime. I kind of found it did drag a little bit.
Yeah, this movie, and we'll get into it in likes and dislikes, but this movie is very much of its time.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
1 hour and 26 minutes almost feels a bit short.
Yeah.
But in this movie, you're maybe hoping that they get to the point a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that later. But before we do that, let's jump into fun facts.
Fun facts. Facts that are fun.
Blairski, you got some fun facts for 1958's The Blob?
I do. So first and foremost, Blob stands for Binary Large Object, which is pretty interesting.
Okay.
Jesse, I'm sure you have this in your notes, and we've also discussed this a little bit together, but this was Steve McQueen's first ever leading role in film, which I found kind of mind-blowing, to be honest. So I'm not sure how old he was in this movie, but he seems definitely older in age.
It's probably because he is. And I mean, he's not old. He's old in comparison to the character he's playing.
Yeah, well, that's
His
yeah,
character, who's a teenager, maybe 17, 18. Steve McQueen, as you had said, first starring role and last role billed as Stephen McQueen. But he was 28 years old when he filmed this movie. Yeah. And of course, this just led to an incredibly storied yet incredibly short career for Steve McQueen.
Yeah, very successful though after this point.
Absolutely.
When released to theaters, this movie was actually part of a double feature. The other film being I Married a Monster from Outer Space. The Blob is definitely more successful of the two, completely outperforming I Married a Monster from Outer Space, which I never even heard of until researching this.
I mean, it's a great title.
It is.
But even just with that knowledge, I wrote down, we'll talk about it later, but it feels like a double billing kind of movie.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Especially with the length of it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Last fun fact I have is there is a horror con type event called Blobfest, held every year in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, at the Colonial Theater, which is where many of these scenes in this movie were shot.
Yeah.
Which is pretty awesome. And I know, Jesse, if me and you lived in Pennsylvania or at least close to it, we'd be going every year.
Yeah, we'd be there for sure. Apparently, to add on to that, the Blob, which was made of a mixture of red dye and silicone, has never dried out. And
Really?
I believe they've taken it to this convention or similar conventions and kind of had it on display, the original Blob.
That's pretty cool. What variation of it, though?
Yeah, that's a good point. I would say probably the that's a good point. I'm guessing it's
probably one of the bigger versions of it, right?
Well, I think it just fits in like a 5 liter pail.
Yeah, which would make sense.
So a little bit smaller, but I mean, it's pretty cool that it's never dried out and they're taking this thing on tour. It's very P.T. Barnum-esque. Let's take it on the road. Yeah. I've got a few more here. Steve McQueen disliked the movie and refused to talk about it for years. But at the same time, when he passed away, they discovered the poster of the Blob on his bedroom wall.
Really?
Which is pretty neat.
Yeah.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, I believe he's an astrophysicist or at least a physicist, very, very smart man, has stated that among all Hollywood aliens, the Blob was his favorite from a scientific perspective. So I'm guessing he's to say, yeah, that's maybe what some kind of alien life form would look like. Who knows?
Just something living inside a space rock.
Yeah, absolutely. And then lastly, the original title was, I think there was 2 original titles. I believe the first one was The Glob.
Mm-hmm.
And then the original title was The Molten Meteor.
Mm-mm.
Which I think they went with the best possible one, the Blob, which they don't actually mention in the movie at all.
Not at all.
As being, what they call it. I think they call it the mass.
They call it a monster a lot.
Yeah, a monster. You do, however, hear it in the opening theme song of the movie, which we'll talk about later. But before we do that, let's move along to the fine folks who worked on this movie. Kicking off, directed by Irvin S. Yeathworth Jr., also directed 1956's The Flaming Teenage, 1959's 4D Man, and 1960's Dinosaurus. Great movie titles.
Yes,
if nothing else, the 1950s and the 1960s had great B movies coming out.
Yes, they did.
Also directed by Russell S. Dowding Jr. As an uncredited director. Also directed 1967's The Hostage, 1968's Fever Heat, and 1977's Ride the Wind. This one written by Theodore Simonson. Also wrote 1959's 4D Man and an early script for 1998's The Blob.
Okay.
Kay Lynn Aker also wrote episodes of Letter to Loretta, Riverboat, and Bronco, and acted in such movies as 1942's War Dogs and 1939's The Girl from Rio, and then also written by Irvin H. Millgate, credited for the story for 1988's The Blob. This one starring, as we had already said, the legendary Steve McQueen as Steve Andrews, Hollywood icon, of course, starred in such films as The Towering Inferno, Bullet, The Thomas Crown Affair, The Magnificent Seven, and as Hiltz, the Cooler King in 1963's The Great Escape, the first DVD I ever owned.
Well, really? That's awesome.
Has a very, very excellent motorcycle chase scene. Also starring Annetta Corsote as Jane Martin, also starred in episodes of Gunsmoke, Death Valley Days, Bonanza, Columbo, Matlock, and in 66 episodes of The Andy Griffith Show, where she played Helen Crump.
Okay.
Okay, rock and roll. Synopsis for 1958's The Blob, courtesy of our dear friends at IMDb. An alien life form consumes everything in its path as it grows and grows.
Kind of.
Yeah, that synopsis is almost as short as the movie itself. It also feels a little bit AI generated.
A little bit, yeah.
This leads us to one of our favorite segments of the show, Kill Count.
Kill Count. The time of the show we count the kills.
Blairski, we got a kill count for the Blob.
We do. We've got 35 total deaths in this film. 5 are on screen. The other 30 are assumed to be the audience inside the movie theater that the Blob takes over.
Sure. And those 5 on screen, we can also mention right here, are awfully underwhelming.
Very, very much so.
That's a perfect segue into our next segment, likes and dislikes.
Likes, dislikes, likes, dislikes,
and everything in between. The portion of the show where we talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and everything in between. Blairski, did we want to start with the 5 underwhelming kills?
They just were. They were. Yeah. You couldn't really tell what was happening. Yeah. To be honest with you, in any of the kills, it would kind of show a shot of the Blob, a shot of the person screaming, and they would kind of just come together.
Yeah, I mean, which is unfortunate because the Blob looked so cool.
That was the best part of the movie,
and it almost looked like some of it was maybe just pictures of the Blob and not the actual Blob itself.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a lot of the horrible deeds done by the Blob were just kind of implied.
Yeah, they very much were. I think the kill that you actually saw most of take place was that very first one where it takes over that old man's hand, followed by his arm, followed, shortly by the rest of his body. Even though it doesn't show that to me was the best kill on screen.
It looked really, and again, it looked really, really cool. It was just underwhelming. Now, I haven't seen the 1988 remake.
I have not either.
But I can only assume it being 1988 that it gets a lot more graphic. I would hope.
I would hope so too, and I think at some point we'll get the chance to watch that movie and review it.
Absolutely. Now, I just feel like there's maybe going to be we're going to be a little bit more on the fence with this one than we have been about more of our more recent movies that we've watched.
Yeah.
But I just want to reiterate, this movie definitely feels of its time.
It does.
It was 1958, and obviously things that were a little bit scarier there, or things that they showed, were maybe conditioned not to be as afraid of now. And then again, also watching the movie, like you had mentioned, it was shown as a double bill at a drive-in theater. That immediately makes things scarier.
Yeah, it does. I found myself kind of catching myself as I was watching it to remind myself this movie was made in 1958. I was bashing it a little too hard when I was watching it in certain points. I was like, it's 1958.
It kind of takes us back to last Halloween season when we were going over the Universal monster movies, where it was, let's, step away from 2023 and put ourselves into the 1920s or the 1930s, or in this case, 1958. Let's just step away from it and kind of just enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I mean, it's maybe unintentionally goofy. But again, the blob itself is very, very cool. I wanted
awesome.
to see more of the blob. And at the ending, we saw it. But I felt like there was a large portion of the movie, pretty much the first half, if not more, was about these, two teenagers trying to convince this small town that they're in danger.
Yeah. And then
But
them
in
looking
danger of
for
what?
where the blob was. No one knew where it was the whole time.
Yeah, the last 20, 25 minutes, the town is under attack, but they spend more time looking for the blob itself.
Yeah.
And then the solution to getting rid of the blob is very anticlimactic.
It's very bad, man.
It's just here's an idea, let's freeze it and then exile it to the Arctic. And it's just like, sure, that seems just like a very where we only have 5 minutes left, we have to figure out a quick way to end this movie. It's like, I know, let's parachute it down to the Arctic, and then it's somebody else's problem.
Yeah, I have that written down. I'm just going to read it how I have written. The ending of the film was pretty anticlimactic to me. Seemed a bit rushed, ended very abruptly. I do like, though, at the ending after they drop it in the Antarctic, it says the end, and then followed by a question mark.
Yeah.
So I do like that.
Which is another good thing. I don't know if 1988 picks up kind of where they left off, or I don't know if there's another sequel.
There is. So there's a sequel to the original.
Okay.
And then 1988 is the remake of the original.
There you go. So I can only assume that the sequel to 1958 picks up kind of where they left off.
Yeah. I don't.
Somebody goes and warms up the blob in the Arctic. How dare you? You've ruined the world. Is there anything you really liked about this one?
Well, you kind of mentioned it already, but the song at the beginning, I loved it. I loved the song at the beginning. That's out of everything I wrote down for this movie. That was the very first thing I wrote down because I loved it.
It's kind of great, and it's kind of something that in this time and place, like we don't see that in movies anymore, unless you're going to see like a James Bond movie.
Yeah.
Where the theme song to the movie is a big deal and kind of stands alone itself. But it kind of sets a weird tone because it's very kind of upbeat.
It is upbeat,
and the images are like a little bit psychedelic. So it's what kind of movie is this? But the song is great. I also wanted to point out that it was written by Burt Bacharach.
Was it really?
Composed the score for 1967's Casino Royale and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. It also appeared on his album Look of Love.
Really?
Burt Bacharach Collection, which is kind of a... Go ahead.
He was in one of the Austin Powers movies as well.
I'm not surprised. It's kind of a weird song to have on an album titled Look of Love.
Yeah.
Track number 3, The Blob. Why not, though? I did love this song, though. It was goofy just as much as this movie was. It was a little bit out of place, but I'd slow dance to The Blob for sure.
It seemed to end. I was like really getting into it, and then it just seemed to end really quickly on me.
Yeah, they just give you a little taste, Yeah. This movie is not scary.
No, not at all.
This movie is not scary, but again, it's of its time. Again, I would love to see this movie in a drive-in. If somebody was to put this up in a drive-in, I would go 100%.
I would too.
It would be a lot of fun, and this one would be a lot of fun to watch with a group of people.
Mm-hmm.
Again, The Blob was fantastic. I thought Steve McQueen and Annetta Corsott were fine.
Not so much everyone else.
Well, it was just like everyone else was just meh. They were okay. I wanted to see the Blob consuming people.
I did too. I really did. And other things. In the synopsis, it says consumes everything in its path.
Everything.
Does not. It does not at all. It consumes people, not objects.
Yeah.
And you don't get to see it consume the people.
I mean, the Blob disappears, and then we spend 10 minutes looking for it, and then it appears, and it's bigger, and then it disappears, and we spend another 10 minutes looking for it, and then it's bigger, and it's just like, no, show us getting it. We want to see the Blob getting bigger.
We do.
Please and thank you.
You know what? The whole movie, I found myself constantly wondering where the dog was and if the dog was okay.
The poor dog. The cutest, arguably the cutest dog.
Such a cute dog, man.
Yeah, really cute. Good idea, cool concept, meh execution.
Yeah, I go with that.
Underwhelming. Give us more Blob.
Yeah, 100% agree with you.
Okay, I'm done talking about likes and dislikes. You want to move on?
Yeah, let's move on, buddy.
Okay, let's move on. This leads us to one of our favorite segments of the show, lessons we learned from watching a 1958's The Blob.
Lessons we learned from watching. Insert title of movie here.
The segment of the show where we talk about the valuable life lessons we learned from watching said movie. Blairski, did you learn anything from watching 1958's The Blob?
Just a couple things. First and foremost, when you have to make an apology to someone, always do it over a sandwich.
Of course.
The last thing I learned is a movie ticket cost only 80 cents in 1958, and watermelon only cost 4 cents per pound.
Unreal. In comparison, I just got a text message from my mother earlier today who said seedless watermelon on sale for $4.94.
That's a pretty good price, though. Huh?
It must be for my mother to text me about, go and get your seedless watermelon now, because it's never going to be this cheap again.
Man, I love me a good seedless watermelon, though.
Yeah, 100% agreed. Yeah. I learned a couple things here. Don't poke mysterious blobs from space with a stick.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Also learned while battling a giant space blob that's consuming your local town folk, if all else fails, you can always try using a fire extinguisher to battle the beast. Just make sure it's the CO2 kind.
Yeah, it has to be the CO2 kind.
And then finally, don't street race. And definitely don't street race backwards. Those kids got real lucky.
I have no idea what that scene had to do with the movie at all.
I think it was just showing how untrustworthy these kids could be.
I guess, but like they seemed like they were enemies with Steve.
Yeah.
And then it turns out they're like really good friends for this.
Let's save the town together. Also, when we say kids, we mean 28-year-old Steve McQueen.
Playing kids.
Of course. This leads us to our next favorite segment, or one of our favorite segments, Line of the Night.
Line of the night. Line of the night. Line of the night. Line of the night. Line of the night. Line of the night. Line of the night. Line of the night. Line of the night.
The segment of the show where we discuss our favorite lines from the movie. They might give us chills. They might give us the giggles. All we know is that they are our favorites. Blairski, what are your favorite lines from the movie?
Man, I've only got one written here. I don't even know who says it, but he goes, "That doesn't sound like a house. That sounds like a dog."
Yeah, I believe that might have been Mooch Miller.
Okay.
But it could have also been one of the, 8 other teenagers in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not? Good line, though.
Stupid. They just hear a dog barking in the forest, I think. And then I think one of the girls says, "Hey, there's a house over there." And that's when he said, "Well, that doesn't sound like a house. That sounds like a dog."
Sounds like a dog. Ugh, what a smart-ass remark. I've got a couple here. Dr. Hallen says it must have absorbed the old man completely. 8 words you never want to hear a doctor say.
Yeah.
It must have absorbed the old man completely. Also, the old woman, oh goodness, elderly woman, says, can't I just dust around the fingerprints? After the police say she isn't allowed to tidy up Dr. Hallen's office because it's technically a crime scene. I hear a mechanic say, "Boy, I'm so tired of looking at the guts of secondhand cars. I could spit grease."
Such a mechanic thing to say.
Yeah. And then finally, Mooch Miller says, "Excuse us, we were just looking for a monster." And they were looking for a monster.
They were indeed.
Yeah. This leads us to our final segment of the show. Some might say it's even our favorite.
Some might.
Celebrity lookalike time.
Celebrity lookalike time.
the time of the show where we take a look at the cast and discuss their celebrity doppelgangers. Spoiler alert, it usually comes down to the character's hairstyle. Now, this one was tricky.
Oh, buddy, was it ever? I don't even have one.
Again, Blair and I were chatting about this, and we said, well, everyone in the movies in the 50s and 60s, they all kind of look similar.
Yeah. Same haircut, same dress style.
Who knows what people will say, 50 years, 60 years, 70
About
years
us.
from now about us.
Yeah.
Probably that we were very, very cool. But anyways, Blair, you didn't come up with anything. I've got two
No.
here. They're a little obscure. Olin Howland, who played the first victim of the Blob, the old man, reminded me of director David Lynch.
Okay.
And then finally, I thought Stephen Chase, who played Dr. Hallen, especially with the glasses, reminded me of Hollywood icon Gregory Peck, who played Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird.
Okay.
This leads us to our final rating for 1958's The Blob Blairski. Out of 5 giant fruit gushers from outer space, what are you giving The Blob?
Although I understand this movie is a classic and a very beloved movie, didn't really do it for me. I am giving it 2 giant fruit gushers from outer space out of 5.
I think it's a reasonable rating for this movie.
Yeah.
Not of our time. Still a fun watch. It maybe would have been even better under different circumstances, like we had already said, at a drive-in, with a
bunch
group of
people.
friends.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which is why I'm giving it 2.5 giant fruit gushers from outer space out of 5. I think that half point goes to the fact that it was Steve McQueen's starring
fair
role.
enough.
Steve McQueen, the definition of cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm excited about this month. We've got some great movies to watch still. We, of course, have Calgary Horror Con coming up, which, we can't talk enough about. Bring it on. A little vacation, a little weekend getaway. I cannot wait.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Hoping that we'll run into some folks who listen to the podcast while we're there. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, if anyone recognizes us, by all means, come say hi. Come say hello.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But until then, this has been Reviews at Scare with Jess and Blair. I'm Jess.
I'm Blair. Remember to stay scary.
And eat every sandwich. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to Reviews at Scare. Make sure you check out our Linktree at linktree/reviewsatscare. That's linktr.ee/reviewsatscare, which has links to our Instagram, YouTube, Patreon, Twitch, and many other things. If you'd like to email us, you can reach us at reviewsatscare@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and remember to stay scary and eat every sandwich. A proud member of Pod Nation TV.